Welcome back, guys, and if you clicked on this video, you are probably a regular subscriber, or you are asking the question, what tools and what stuff do I need to get involved in woodworking? And today this video will cover some of those questions and more, and hopefully I can answer all the questions you guys have, because if I was a new woodworker, I would like to have a video like this just explaining what some good tools are to start off with, because you probably see everyone's shop filled with tools and you're just not sure what tools to start out with. So let's dig in. So you by now probably have decided that you think you're ready to become a woodworker, and it's quite simple actually. Most of woodworking is sanding. So that will be where I start off today. You're going to want to have some type of electric sander. Hand sanding is just not going to cut it, and I realized it got really dark now out there. So hand sanding is just not going to cut it. You're not going to be able to sand everything by hand. You're going to want an electric sander. You're going to want something like a random orbital sander or a palm sander. And basically, here is a palm sander. And it is a square, and it's pretty much an electric sander. And they're really useful because when you're done with the woodworking project and you're just down to the part where you need to sand it and glue it together, you're not going to want to have to sit there and slowly hand sand it. I can't find my random orbital sander right now, but this is what it looks like, and it is basically all electric. So after you have gotten a good sander, you're probably going to need something to cut the wood. And a lot of people are going to tell you, get a handsaw. That's a pretty good idea, but you're going to want something more than a handsaw. You're going to want to make exact cuts. You're going to want to make good cuts, perfect cuts. So for that, I would definitely recommend your first tool as a woodworker is a table saw. And it doesn't even have to be a good table saw. It can just be a contractor saw like mine right here. This is a Ryobi contractor saw, but I use it as a table saw. It has a 10-inch blade, and I can make rip cuts only up to 27 inches, but with it you can do a lot of projects, and it's very handy to have. You can make cross cuts, which are basically cuts going across the table instead of a rip cut, which is going through the table. And the next tool that you could probably use is a router table. Router tables are very handy. Here is mine. This is a cheap router table. It's only $100, and the router came with it. I picked up this at Home Depot. It's a bench top one, and it's very easy to use. And here's my sander. I couldn't find it. Basically, it just spins around and it sands stuff. But this, you're going to want to pick up some type of router. You don't even have to have the table. You can build the table, and it basically just turns on. And what it does is it does profiling in wood. It can do roundovers, Roman ogee bits. It can pretty much do anything in carving wood. It can cut grooves. It can do miniature dados and stuff like that. So you're going to want to get a router. And remember, guys, these tools don't have to be expensive. They can be very cheap as long as they work and they're somewhat decent quality. I would definitely recommend checking out Ryobi. They're very cheap, affordable, and they're really good as well. And so right now, basically, you're going to have a table saw, type of sander, and a router. And for all these tools, you're going to need something to protect your ears. And this is where I would recommend some type of ear protection. These are 3M Tech ear protection, and they also have a radio and MP3 built in. Those are very cool. I would recommend those as well. I have a bandsaw, which is good for making cuts that are bigger on big pieces of wood, and they're not so much sharp, but they're just good for making rounded cuts. A hand jigsaw is some type of is a power tool that you use with your hand. It's very similar to a circular saw, and it can just make curvy cuts in the wood, and it can make straight cuts as well. Now, if you think that you want to do some type of detail work or something like that on nice, fine, small projects, you're going to want to pick up a scroll saw, and my scroll saw is in the basement right now. But a scroll saw can make very small, fine cuts. You can look them up online. They come in various sizes and shapes. Well, not really shapes, but they can make different shapes. And those are really good for creating small, precise cuts. If you think you're going to be a contractor or something like that, or you just want to make a bunch of straight cuts with 2x4 pieces of wood, then I would definitely recommend a miter saw or a chop saw. These cut down the wood perfect, and they have automatic angle adjusters on the sides as well, which makes cutting 2x4s very easy and very accurate, and you can do many repetitive cuts. Now, if you think that you want to be a wood turner instead of worker, you can get yourself a lathe, and this is a cheap $150 Harbor Freight lathe. I would definitely not recommend this lathe though, because it is not made with so much quality, and I wish someone wrote a better review about it when I picked it up. But you're going to want to get a lathe if you want to do wood turning and type of works like that. Now, some of the tools that I use the least often would be a circular saw, my lathe probably, and I guess a planer. A planer basically shaves down wood for you, and there's my planer. It shaves down the wood to different thicknesses, so you can run this 2x3 in, and you can have it come out as a 2x3/4, a 2x2 3/4. You can shave off, and this is good for working with rough wood, where you can run it through and you can get the new grain underneath it. So now that you have all the tools to cut out the wood and you have something to sand the wood with, you're going to want to assemble the wood somehow, and for that you're going to need wood glue, lots of wood glue. This is Tight Bond wood glue. It works very good for me, and you can buy gigantic chunks of wood glue. I have a gallon one inside my house right now because it's winter, or it's becoming winter, and I just don't want it to freeze, so I put it in there to keep it from getting wrecked and frozen. And to clamp down the wood as you're using wood glue, you're going to want some clamps. Here's an example of a C-clamp. This is a very small clamp, and I also have spring clamps. These types of clamps are good for smaller projects, like I made a longboard, and it worked very fine for those types of projects. But you're going to want to pick up some bigger clamps, like bar clamps and pipe clamps, and just a bunch of different kind of clamps. You can never have too many clamps as a woodworker, and they're great Christmas presents as well. Now, if you don't want to use clamps, you can use screws or nails, and if you're having screws, then you're gonna need a drill, and I got a Ryobi drill down in my basement where I've been working this part of the year because it's so cold outside. It's just a cheap drill, and it works really good. Now, they're good for pre-drilling and screwing in screws as well. Now, there are many other tools I can name, but I'm basically here just to tell you the basic tools you're going to want to use to determine what type of woodworker you are. So I hope I answered all your questions that you guys had. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave me a comment below. And if this video helped you, give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe before you leave so that you never miss another woodworking project every Tuesday. I will see you guys next time. Bye.